Okay, this is lesson 1 or video 2 of my English paper piecing series. You're going to need some scrap fabrics as well. I forgot to mention that in my last video. So we're going to get one of these shapes. These are just freebies from magazines. I'm going to put a little dot glue, just a really tiny one, just to hold that in place. There's actually a bit of fluff in this, so this kind of looks like a bit more than it actually is. You can use a pin here if you prefer to use a pin. And you're just going to put it on the back of the fabric. So we've got a bit of surplus there, and we're going to just use the scissors to cut roughly around the outside. You want more than 1/4 of an inch, just a little bit more. I usually aim for, I do it by eye, and I aim for about something like 3/8 of an inch, but if it's 1/2 an inch, something like that, that's fine too. So we're just going to roughly cut that shape out. Doesn't have to be perfect at all. Let's do that. Okay, so you have something that looks like this. Now we're going to try the thread basting where you go through the paper as the first method. This is kind of the historical way of doing it, but it does make it harder to reuse those papers. So this is my least favourite method, and this is how I teach the classes. I start with my least favourite and work to my most favourite. So I'm just going to get a piece of thread, and this is just a 12 weight thread cotton that I use. It's because it's easy to remove. I'm just going to grab any needle in this case because it doesn't really matter on this. We don't need fine stitches, so we're going to keep it easy for ourselves. I'm going to thread that needle. I'm not going to knot the thread on this either. So this is just going to be one single strand. I don't need a lot of it either. And then what we're going to do is work edge by edge. So we're going to fold down one edge. Can kind of finger press it here, and then fold down the adjacent edge to create a point like this. Then what you're going to do is you can either work back to front or front to back, it doesn't matter. And I might be going the wrong way around for you because I am left-handed, so just bear that in mind. But the principles are the same. You're going to go through all of those layers. So you're going through the fold there, so you're going through the top layer of fabric, the second layer of fabric, all the way through the paper and through to the other side. And you're going to pull the needle through, leave a bit of a tail, and then you kind of need to have a bit of dexterity in your hands here because you've got to keep that kind of held down there, but you're going to fold over the next corner. So you're doing exactly the same thing, just to the next one along. And then if you've gone back to front, your thread will be on the front, so then you need to go front to back. You're making like a big stitch. But if yours is the other way around, that's fine too. And you're going through all the layers again. And if you notice, I'm kind of about, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, something like that, from the edge. As long as you're not right up against the edge, that will hold it in place. I kind of go for like the middle of the seam allowance. Okay, so you've got one massive stitch on that side, and then you just keep working. So let's keep going. I'm on the back now, so I'm going back to front. All the way through. That's just the tail there. Next one along. And you'll notice as you go along you can kind of let go of it a bit. It's not such a worry once those corners are both secure on the sides. Okay. Front to back. Oops. This can be a little bit fiddly, which is why it's not my favourite method. Okay, back to front. So that big stitch is on the back this time, and then we're at the last corner because we've got 6 to do for hexagons. Front to back. You just got to be careful of your fingers here as well so you don't stab yourself. And then now I'm back to the beginning. I'm going to go through that first one again just to kind of secure it because this is a bit flappy, this edge, without having that. So I'm going back through here. It doesn't have to be exactly in that hole, but kind of close. Okay, so now I'm going to cut this thread, but I'm going to leave a bit of a tail again. Whoops, need sharper scissors. So that's one of our first hexagons, and this probably needs a bit of a press because it's a little bit baggy. So get your iron out, give it a bit of a press, but you can make a few of these and then press them all in one go. And if you were doing the class with me at this point, I would ask you to make 3 of those because we're going to ultimately need 7 at the end. So with each technique, if we make 3, we'll have a couple left over. Okay, so this is technique number 2, and this is also thread basting, but you can actually leave the thread in if you wish. So if you're using lighter colour fabrics, you want to use a lighter colour thread, because if you're not taking that thread out, you'll be able to see it through the fabric. So I'm just going to use the same thread as I did before. I'm actually using the same needle as before as well, and I'm still not knotting it, and that's probably still enough thread. And as we did before, I'm going to take a hexagon, add a tiny bit of glue, or you can use a pin, but you can see from the last technique why you might not want to do that, because you can kind of get yourself stabbed. And I can see the pattern through this fabric, and I know I kind of want this bare on there, so I'm going to just position it there, roughly cut around like we did before. If you go too small with the seam allowances, you can find that they kind of shift and it's harder to kind of keep that edge in place. So it's actually better to have slightly bigger seam allowances than it is smaller ones. It's much easier to work with bigger ones. Okay. So that's started exactly the same as before, but this time we'll be working exclusively on the back. And we're not going to go through the paper this time. So what we're going to do is fold the 2 edges as before. So you're still working on the corners. You're going to take your thread. You're going to pick up either side of that fold, not going through the paper, but you're making it like a stitch across that fold. It doesn't matter if you go right to left or left to right, you're still going to have exactly the same result. You're leaving a little bit of a tail, but then you're going to do that stitch again in the same direction you just did. So it creates a little stitch on top like that, and that's nice and secure now. You can pull that thread really tight and that tail isn't going anywhere, which means you can let go of it a bit more than the previous method too. So let's fold down the next corner. You're still working your way around either clockwise or anti-clockwise. I'm going clockwise, you can go the other way, that's fine. If you pick up the fabric either side of that fold, pull the needle through, making that stitch again. So you'll find this way is a little bit more time consuming, but it's a bit more secure. And if you don't want to take the threads out afterwards, you might prefer this method. So we're just going to keep going around, and I'll show you what happens when we get to the last edge. Okay, so we've got these last 2 edges, and this is our last corner. So we're going to fold it as we did before, and we're going to go through it, and same again, just as before. And if these stitches are right on top of each other, that's okay. But you'll notice now that we don't need to stretch across there because it's still nice and secure. So that's actually done. We can leave it there and not have to worry about joining up to the beginning. So just leave a bit of a tail, and that's all there is to the second method. So at this point you might want to press that, and as I said before, I would say in my class to make 3 of those.